Hi, my name is Alan Lazo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. We are a private, nonprofit civil rights organization whose mission is to end housing discrimination and ensure equal access to housing throughout Oregon. Thank you so much for joining us for our virtual fundraising campaign this coming week. We know these are unprecedented and unsettling times. All of us together are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, staying home and staying safe. We're hopeful that you and those close to you are safe and healthy. And we are eternally grateful for your continued support and engagement with our organization. During these times, we recognize that many members of our community are struggling to protect their rights and keep their housing. As a civil rights organization, our work is focused on upholding the rights of everyone protected by federal, state, and local fair housing laws. The Federal Fair Housing Act originally was passed 52 years ago in April 1968, the reason we celebrate Fair Housing Month throughout the month of April. We know that communities of color, immigrants and refugees, or those perceived to be from other countries, people living with disabilities, Section 8 voucher holders, families with children, survivors of domestic violence, and many others are encountering even greater challenges during this time of crisis. That is why we are continuing our work to battle housing discrimination in its many forms, and that is why we need your help. Please join us online throughout the coming week and on Thursday for the culmination of our virtual campaign. As we celebrate the successes that we've created working together, you'll have many opportunities to support our work. You can buy virtual tickets to our event or start your own fundraising campaign to support our work to educate residents, advocates, housing providers, and jurisdictions about their fair housing rights and responsibilities, or to advocate for those experiencing discrimination that are contacting us through our hotline. We know that together, we make a neighborhood, and living that theme now is more vital than ever. Thank you again for supporting fair housing this month, every month, and especially during these difficult times for so many members of our communities.
Hello, my name is Shabri Vickers, Community Development Officer for Wells Fargo here in Oregon. Wells Fargo is honored to be joining you all in this virtual gathering as we support the Fair Housing Council of Oregon during April, Fair Housing Month. We truly believe that together we can make a neighborhood, and even more so, together we can bring about the positive change for those who need us most. And for that reason, Wells Fargo has decided to give over $1 billion during the next 5 years to ensure American families can find safe, affordable homes. And we know that the work of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon is so important, especially now. So we ask you, join us. Let's support the Fair Housing Council of Oregon in a significant way. We need the Fair Housing Council of Oregon to be strong, and you can help us do that. Thank you.
My name is Tomas Hernandez. I serve on the board of FHCO. I first learned of FHCO and the great work they do when I was working as a legal aid attorney in Lynn and Benton counties. As an attorney, I was litigating many fair housing cases where a housing provider was discriminating against a person based on the person's disability, national origin, or because they had small children. My clients were being evicted because they had a disability that required a caregiver to come over to help, and a housing provider would claim that my client was violating their guest policy. Sometimes my clients had mobility issues that caused them to fall, and next thing they know, they are being evicted for a noise violation. What those types of cases had in common is that I was not fighting against overt discrimination. I was fighting against a facially neutral rule that had a discriminatory effect on certain people. My client did not fall because they wanted to cause excessive noise. They fell because they have a disability. I lost track of how many people I encountered that believed a landlord could evict them under similar circumstances. I also lost track of how many housing providers I talked to that believed their actions were justified because their rules were written in a neutral manner. What both client and housing provider lacked was education about fair housing law. I always felt that a lot of litigation could be avoided if people knew their rights and their obligations. While I love to litigate certain issues, I think that resolving problems at the lowest level is good for everyone. And that does not happen if people are uninformed about what right looks like. This brings me to one of the things I like best about FHCO. That's their education and outreach to tenants and housing providers. FHCO are expert trainers in the field. They have a statewide network to get the message out to stakeholders. They are a voice of reason and compassion, and when needed, that ferocious advocate for the person or family facing unlawful discrimination. I know that litigation gets all the glory, but it is educating tenants about their rights that empower them. It is educating the housing providers about their responsibilities that informs them of what right is under the law. Most housing providers do the right thing once they receive a little education, and that's an excellent outcome and an excellent use of resources. I want to thank you for watching this video. I would also like to ask you to consider a donation to FHCO so that they can keep up the great work they do throughout our state. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kirsten and I'm the Director of Enforcement and Public Policy at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. Today I'd love to share with you about an incredible opportunity we've had the chance to be a part of called the Housing Catalyst Collaborative. First, to give some context, I'd love to share the why and where it started. In 2018, we reported our Portland Audit Testing Report, and at that time, in conversations with the Urban League of Portland, it became clear that we were likely seeing underreporting of housing allegations related to race and national origin. And when we look at the historical context of discrimination, policies and practices that have impacted communities of color, things like redlining and predatory lending pre-foreclosure crisis, we really wanted to see how could we try to address this issue of ensuring that people who have experienced some of the most historical harm were receiving the legal resources they need. So at that time, we, with the Urban League, approached the City of Portland to receive funding. And in an effort led by the Urban League and it's supported and collaborated with El Programa Hispano Católico, Legal Aid Services, and Fair Housing Council of Oregon, we started the Housing Catalyst Collaborative. And what we do is Legal Aid and Fair Housing Council provide legal training to frontline staff of Urban League and El Programa to ensure that they are able to identify fair housing issues as they're serving folks in the community. And what this does is ensures that people have the access they need to fair housing and legal resources through a culturally specific community that they have trust and relationship with. So once a fair housing issue arises, then we bring the case to the Housing Catalyst Collaborative, which meets on a almost bi-weekly basis to discuss cases and to decide the best legal approach. So to give you an example, there was one incident, for instance, where an African-American woman with children who had disabilities brought up essential repairs that were needed to her apartment. And after raising the issue multiple times, the housing provider told her that the issues arising in the apartment were because of her children with disability, without substantiated evidence to show that that was actually what was going on. And so we worked as a collaborative, the Urban League urgently approaching, finding her other housing resources, somewhere else to live that felt stable, Legal Aid investigating the cause of the issues that were arising, and we at Fair Housing Council of Oregon writing a complaint and submitting it to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, raising the issue of allegations related to disability. So it really shows you from a multifaceted approach how essential it is that we work together to address the issues of housing discrimination, particularly around historical forms of harm. Thank you for tuning in, and we really appreciate your ongoing support at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon.
Well, hi again, everyone. It's so great to have you with us today for our virtual mission-centered luncheon. I'm Alan Lazo, the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. We are a private, nonprofit civil rights organization whose mission is to end housing discrimination and ensure equal access to housing throughout Oregon. Today is the culmination of a week of celebrating our successes and highlighting our partnerships. We hope you've enjoyed seeing the work we are doing together with our vital partners. And if you haven't had a chance to see those videos, head on over to our website at fhco.org to see those. Today, and the work we do throughout the year, would not be possible without our long list of Fair Housing Month sponsors, including Wells Fargo, the Portland Housing Bureau, Princeton Property Management, Regional Multiple Listing Service, Inc., Kell Alterman and Runstein, LLP, the Oregonian, Kaiser Permanente, DocuMart, Dalton Management, Multnomah County Department of County Human Services, Youth and Family Services Division, the City of Hillsborough, the Salem Housing Authority, Tomasi Salyer Martin, Clackamas County Social Services, CASA of Oregon, and Pasadori Properties. Thank you all for your continued support. Things certainly look very different than we had been planning for our luncheon together today. We couldn't have imagined when we planned this event that we'd be coming to you through this screen rather than from the stage. But the benefit is that we are able to reach out to so many more of you and to those of you across the state. I'll tell you what, give us a shout out in the comments below here if you're watching today from somewhere far away from Portland. But wherever you are, we're grateful that you've joined us today. So let us know you're out there by commenting on our Facebook page, ask a question, or just say hi. We're watching for your comments right now and would love to connect with you. As we all are trying to make sense of the world around us during this COVID-19 pandemic, I constantly am reminded about the importance of the theme for our virtual campaign. Together, we make a neighborhood. I know that through our commitment to come together during this time of crisis, we can continue to build the open and inclusive communities rooted in opportunity that we all have worked so hard to envision. Housing discrimination in any form, at any time, must be unacceptable in our communities. And access to opportunity for everyone must be our new norm. That's why we're here today, and that is why we continue to need your help today more than ever. We're here responding to calls to our housing discrimination hotline from those being impacted in their housing by this health crisis, and being ever vigilant about the many ways those folks might be experiencing discrimination during these difficult times. Even though we can't be out there with you right now, we continue to educate frontline communities about being targeted by hate and harassment, about their rights, as well as educating housing providers about their responsibilities. And our public policy advocacy is informed by and recognizes more acutely than ever the role historical harm has played in continuing disparities and in today's crisis. Like thousands of others, my introduction to the work of FHCO was through the very impactful Fasten Your Seatbelts, It's Been a Bumpy Ride bus tour that highlights that history of housing discrimination, segregation, and displacement. I'll never forget when I went on my first bus tour 9 years ago and listened to our dear friend Valerie Otani talking about the incarceration of Japanese and Japanese Americans at the start of World War II, and how much their experience made me think about the experience of my own immigrant parents. If you've been on one of our bus tours, you know how powerful the stories we tell are. And one of those great storytellers is our own Ed Washington and his many tales of Vanport City, that World War II housing project that was racially integrated. So without further ado, let's hear more from Ed today.
You know, probably the best history that we have and can share are our stories. And everybody has them. Everybody has a story. Back in 2008, the Fair Housing Council asked me if I would be interested in being part of a historical bus tours program that they were setting up to tell the story about Vanport. What an opportunity they opened up for people to learn about the history of housing in Oregon and how that history impacted particularly people of color.
Growing up as a child here, I thought I would be here for the rest of my life because this was really my home, and it's what I knew, and it was where I was very comfortable, and it's what I enjoyed. But that was sort of brought to a screeching halt in May of 1948.
I was 7 years old when I moved to Portland, Oregon from Birmingham, Alabama. And when we got here, really the only place that we could settle was Vanport City, Oregon. And that was on June 6, 1944. Vanport was a housing project and it was created to provide much needed housing for all the people that were traveling to work in the Kaiser shipyards. I've thought a lot about what made Vanport so great. It was inclusive. There was 24-hour daycare centers. There was nurseries. The schools were outstanding. The schools were just remarkable. That Sunday morning, May 30th, 1948, there were these notices posted on everybody's step that made it very clear that Vanport could flood. And so approximately about 3:30, we were on our way to go up and see the water. But we were fortunate to get stopped by a policeman, and he said, well, you better get out of Vanport as fast as you can. He said, the dikes have broke, and this place will be on the water within an hour. As we were up on what is now present day, the extension of Denver Avenue, watching the people below you stream out of Vanport just with whatever they could carry. My mother had one small suitcase with a few important papers and a few pictures. And that water flowed in like nobody's business. People were up on top of the houses, animals were on top of the houses. It was just sheer destruction. And I tell people that where we speak on the historical tour about Vanport, that water was 10 or 20 feet over our heads. Primary reason that Vanport was built was because there was a need for housing. And there was a need for housing that was unobstructed. You couldn't be denied it because of your ethnicity. You knew that in Vanport you had a house. I think the Fair Housing Council of Oregon really subscribe to that same code and goals. They care about everybody having a place to call home. And when a person runs into difficulty finding that place that they want to call home, they know that they can call on the Fair Housing Council. They know that there's somebody who will speak up on their behalf. You need somebody to help you. And so thank goodness for the Fair Housing Council of Oregon.
I have to admit, I do get emotional every time I have the privilege of hearing Ed talk about his story. I know that it's stories and journeys like Ed's that inspire me to continue our fight. And we're hopeful that you are likewise inspired to support us with a contribution today. First, I'd like to start out by thanking our special appeal sponsors, the cities of Gresham, Corvallis, and Beaverton, the Adrian and Samuel Blackman Fund at the Oregon Community Foundation, and Solutions Yes. I also want to thank our partners at Wells Fargo for their $5,000 gift, which we'll use to match the first $5,000 in contributions made today. When you raise your virtual hand and contribute $1,000, you'll be supporting work like the hotlines we run to provide resources to both housing consumers and housing providers. Contribute $500 today and you'll support work such as our ability to go into classrooms and educate students about the history and importance of civil rights in housing. And just a moment here. We are so grateful. We just received a $2,500 contribution from Princeton Property Management. We'll use that to match the next $2,500 in contributions. So what are you waiting for? Will you give $52 today to help us celebrate the 52nd anniversary of the Federal Fair Housing Act, the root of the work that we do here at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon? And of course, maybe you'd like to give us a larger amount, like maybe your $1,200 stimulus check, but can't give it all right now? Consider becoming a monthly donor. There's a button for that on our event page. You can visit that event page at fhco.org, or you can text Together20 to 44321 to give today. I know that our virtual lunchtime together is coming to an end, and I want to be sure to thank all the dedicated and hardworking staff and the board at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon for their commitment to end housing discrimination. I especially want to thank our development team for all the great work it took to make this hard pivot to our virtual event today. We couldn't do our work to envision neighborhoods of opportunity for all without our sponsors and without all of you. So thank you everyone for your generosity and for joining us this afternoon.